Miami's community newspapers. Thank you for joining us. And today, the mayor of Coral Gables, Vince Lago, is going to tell us about everything about Coral Gables. So let's start off. Number one, people want to know, at some point, you decided to run for office. Why, and what was the initial reason for it?
Well, Mr. Miller, as always, I want to say thank you to you and to your incredible staff who do a great job here in community newspapers. You are, as I've said before on many occasions, people come to you for news. As we've lost a lot of trust in other entities, they're really drilling down. They're really coming to entities like yourself, community newspapers, to hear the truth and to see what's happening in these communities. So why did I decide to run? I had served on multiple different boards. I have been involved with Lago contra Cancer for many years, where my father's been a physician for free for years. I had served on other different charities, arts charities, and I was on the Planning and Zoning Board for a few years in the city of Coral Gables. My grandfather, who was also a physician like my dad, was a senator in Cuba. He's Pedro Pan, and he spent some time very involved in politics and paid the consequences for his involvement in politics. He believed in democracy. He believed in human rights. He believed that everybody should have an opportunity to serve. I learned from him at a very young age when he came to this great country, and he would take care of me when he wasn't working as a physician, because he became a physician in this great country. He always talked to me about politics. He always talked to me about, the importance.
Is your father or grandfather?
My grandfather.
Okay.
Because my grandfather was the one that took care of me. My grandfather and my grandmother during the day. While my father and my mother were both working, physician, he would pick us up, or my grandmother would pick us up at daycare. And they would take us to their home in Coral Gables.
Do you remember that?
I remember that like it was yesterday. We went to a small school called Yolanda Garden School. And it was on Lejeune. Now it's the Green Apple. And my grandfather and my grandmother lived on Minorca, 427 Minorca. And that was the first home that my parents bought in Coral Gables, and they ended up giving it to my grandfather.
Wow.
Imagine buying a house for under $100,000 back then. I think it was like $75,000. But my grandfather was the one that instilled in me the importance of service, the importance of engagement, the importance of, being a reasonable voice in this community, and really standing up for what you believe in. So I remember the day that I decided to run. We decided 2 years ago, and I say we because it was an effort between myself and my wife and my family and my friends, who played a real key role, and all the advocates in the city, all my friends in the city, all the people who were really involved. And we spent 2 years walking door to door and getting to know the residents and explaining who we are and why we want to serve. And let me tell you, over the last 11 and a half years, it's been a true privilege. We've done something that no one has ever done. I wanted to treat public office like a business. And as you know, as a business owner, one of the most important things that we do is we make sure that we take care of our clients. Who are my clients? In the city, they're the residents and the business owners. So we instituted 11 and a half years ago something that had never been done, which is open office hours. So every Friday for the last 11 and a half years, you can come and visit me at 2 o'clock, and we usually end around 5, 5:30, 6, sometimes even 7 o'clock, depending on who's there. We'll have 20, 30, 40 people show up. The key and the reason why we do that is to make sure that everybody can see the mayor at a minimum once a week. So if you call me, if you email me, if you reach out to my staff and for some reason you can't get a meeting that week, sometimes it's difficult. We have a hectic, issues that we have to deal with. You can always see the mayor on Friday, and I can't avoid it. You can't hide behind a phone, you can't hide behind an email or staff.
So prior to that, there wasn't an ability to book a meeting. So at the time when you got that done, what kind of resistance or applause did you get?
Well, a lot of the elected officials in Miami-Dade County thought it was crazy. There's no way that you can sustain that. But let me tell you, I've gotten to enjoy it a lot. I enjoy it a lot because think about it. It's something that I've gotten from my father and my grandfather, both physicians. The idea and the ability to help somebody. Somebody comes to you, look, Vince, I'll give you an example. There was a restaurant that came to see me that since January has been having an issue with a zoning issue, a very minor technical issue about seating. They told me that we've been unable to resolve this issue. We're trying to figure out a way to address it. Mayor, help us out. Having a background in construction and engineering, I have a deep understanding of zoning, the building department, understanding of code, and I sat down with the individual and their attorneys. I took them immediately to meet with a building official, and we had a conversation of how can we resolve this issue? What can they do to meet in the middle? And the meeting the issue was addressed, and they opened yesterday.
Very nice.
On Miracle Mile. So that to me is what,
So folks, go to the new restaurant in Coral Gables that just opened.
It's called Emmy. Emmy. It's a wonderful, wonderful restaurant on Miracle Mile. But that right there, feeds my soul. and gives me a lot of energy to continue doing what I do in the city.
So when that happens for you, understanding the difference it made for those people that are on the other side, you think of your grandfather every once in a while. You say, "You were right."
I do. I think I'm on my grandfather. I think I'm on my grandmother, who was amazing, who had a PhD, a very brilliant woman, a person who was, soft spoken, but always was just all about family, all about keeping the family together. And I think about my father. My father's amazing. 73 years old, 74, and the guy does all he puts his community first.
So let's go back to the age in which you recognize what your grandfather was doing and what the feelings and information he was giving you. How old were you?
It's probably, I would probably say I was 13, 14 years old. Right when I was in Culver Military School. I went there for 3 years, and my grandfather, he used to always write me notes and letters, and I would get them, and it would always enlighten my day.
Sometimes if you're really lucky, you figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And some are early, some are later. But once you find that, obviously it's not just for you, it's for all those people and the families the people that you help. And of course, when you feel better, your family, plural, affects everybody. So, and speaking of family, the city of Coral Gables has tried off and on, or maybe it was the neighbors in Little Gables, to annex. There was a couple other areas in the city that nothing happened yet, or it wasn't positive. But let's talk about the annexation move by the neighbors and by the city to become having Little Gables part of Coral Gables. What's the next step?
Well, listen, I'm in favor of annexation. I think it's an opportunity for both the city and the residents, and also the county. If you look at the map, and I think it's critical to look at the map, it's an enclave that is surrounded by the city of Coral Gables on 3 sides. The other side is 8th Street, and then you have the city of Miami across the street. So it doesn't really make much sense.
How many homes is it, more or less?
It's a few hundred. But when you talk about where's the nearest location of Miami-Dade County, you have to go all the way to 57th Avenue. It's a far distance.
Yeah.
So it's an enclave that no one can really understand. I've done some research to try to understand it with a lot of historians. Why did George Merrick leave that out? There must have been some sort of squabble with a landowner. But if you look at it on a map, you'll see that the delineation between the city of Coral Gables and the city of Miami and that little enclave, it needs to be rectified. We all talk about issues of public safety when you talk about elected officials as being our number one priority. Under my watch as mayor, we've expanded for the first time in over 15 years, police officers by 15 and firefighters by 15. We went to Tallahassee. We got money for a new fire station on Sunset, and we're expanding to our 4th fire station. It's all about improving response times. So if public safety is our number one priority, I asked the chief on the record in the commission, what do you recommend in regards to annexation? Because I think it makes sense. It makes sense so that we can service the residents of that area of Little Gables and also service our residents in a much better way.
When people move into a city, one of the things they always mention, police. Mm-hmm. Another thing, of course, shopping, but really schools are next in there. Parks are certainly right up there. So let's talk a couple things. Let's talk about the parks and what the city's doing to not just maintain, but are there any moves to try to either improve those parks or to get some other areas for parks?
So when I got elected, one of the first things that I did was I wrote a piece of legislation that put 0.5% on every single permit, similar to art in public places, which is by county mandate, it's 1% of every permit goes into an account, so we can buy art as a city. Well, I put that 0.5%, and that's going into a parks trust fund, where we use that money. Say 100% of it, 65% goes to park acquisition, where we've bought 12 little parks all throughout the city.
Very nice.
And the other 0.35, through the leadership of then Vice Mayor Mike Mena, we use some of the money to fix up or enhance existing parks. But the main objective is to really push on parks acquisition. We have almost 300 acres of green space in the city of Coral Gables. When you talk about parks, the intent of my legislation is to acquire little parks, 5, 10, 15,000 square feet, where people can walk within 5 to 10 minutes to a park. If you look at our downtown, and I'm going to show you certain things, so as they mature over the next few years, you'll remember that we talked about this. We never really had parks in the downtown, except for Pond Circle Park, which is pretty inaccessible. We already have right now in the books several parks that I've been able to negotiate with developers. The first one is the used car lot in front of Mercedes-Benz.
Yes.
It's a 12,000 square foot park. Piece of property that will now be a park. Thanks to Armando Godina and Manny Galladay, who are developing a rental project next door. I negotiated to be able to get that piece of property into the city's hands and to build a park there. After 4 years of negotiating with Publix, on Andalusia, they're going to be redoing their building there. It's going to be a 3-story building with surface parking, with third floor parking, which is great because it'll get rid of the parking on the surface, open up the property. And we also got a 20,000 square foot park, which will be deeded over to the city right on Andalusia.
That's a nice
So
size
it'll
park.
be literally a 1-minute walk, 2-minute walk to Miracle Mile. That piece of property will be coming online. So that's 3 blocks away from that other piece of property, that other park that's coming adjacent to Mercedes-Benz. And then we also have in front of Nordstrom's a green space, which will be a commercial building. And we were able to also negotiate a little park there that will be a park where people can sit there. It'll be a passive area. You'll have some art. And I'm working on right now another property that's forthcoming in the downtown where we're negotiating a 15,000 square foot park. My intent is to change our downtown so it's more residential friendly, but also to make sure that people can have a moment of solitude, a moment of enjoyment, because I think every great community has green spaces. And I think that's part of my legacy.
One of the things we do recognize when you go into a park, and don't take off your shoes, but if you took off the shoes and you stood there in nature, there's something that happens to the soul where
you get grounded. You get grounded.
And like immediately, and out off of Bird, next to one of the hospitals out there, there's a park, Dade County Park. It's called Meditation Park. It's like just go over there and just relax and do a little bit of yoga, or just sit there and contemplate your thoughts. So the sea change in Biscayne Bay and our water supply is pretty important to us. We know that the county overall has over 100,000 septic tanks, and there's this move to try to get rid of the bad ones first. I understand there are about 5,000, mostly on the east side. And so, what, if anything, is Coral Gables going to do to deal with the changes as far as septic tanks?
I'm going to be very candid with you, and this is a real conversation. In the city, we're looking at potentially around $300 million.
Oh.
Required to remove the existing septic tanks. I've been working with Commissioner Regalado, who's doing a great job, by the way, serving us along with Commissioner Cabrera from the county, two people who I have a lot of respect for and who are always available to serve the residents here. As a matter of fact, we're going to be starting now office hours once a month for Cabrera in my office.
Oh, very nice.
So I'll invite you so you can engage. It's another opportunity for residents to come and meet with their county representatives. But this issue of septic tanks is a real issue. I serve on the watershed board. I'm the vice chair of the watershed board. My chairwoman is Cohen Higgins, who also does a great job. And we're really attacking issues in regards to not only sea level rise, our bay. You can notice a quality. I'm a spear fisherman. No one's gonna sell me on bay quality. I've seen it all. I've been involved in the bay for the last 20 plus years. I understand the seagrass. I understand how delicate it is. Our property values, and I'm just giving you a little bit of background of how important this is. Our property values, 25% of our tax base comes from properties on the water. So think about this. If the bay is unhealthy, if the bay smells, if we're having issues with our fisheries, if we're having issues where people cannot enjoy the bay, like it's happened in other areas of this country, our property values are going to suffer. Just a drop in 1% in those 25% is a massive decrease in property values that would hurt our budget. So to me, we have to attack this issue. How are we going to attack it? There's multiple different options. Either we can bond it, which is a significant amount of money, which I think we'll have to eventually do something like that. But I think it's going to be a mixed approach. We're going to need state help, like what happened in the Keys. We're going to have to take some responsibility from the county, and also the cities are going to have to come to the table. I think that 3-pronged approach is going to be able to address this issue. But to address it in the city of Coral Gables right now is $300 million. I have an idea. that I've been talking to many of my colleagues in the county, but it takes a lot of political courage. I think that what we need to do is we need to do something similar to what happens when you buy a home. When you buy a home, you do a search, a lien search, and if there's any, you pay for insurance. If there's any issues with the home, the seller and the buyer negotiate a credit, or the work gets addressed. I think what we need to do is we need to address and review the extent of the septic tanks. Find out if there's issues, if they're cracked, if they need to be completely replaced, and not replace them. I know that people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
That money needs to be put into a trust. It needs to be put into an escrow account to help us fund changing out all the septic tanks that are required in the city. The problem here is that if we continue to change out septic tanks, even if they're faulty, it's just a vicious cycle. And we're throwing good money at a bad issue. So we need to sit down and have a conversation, a real conversation, and say, let's start putting money away to address this issue in 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I know it's a long time away, but the only way you get it done is by addressing that. And I'll give you an example how the city of Coral Gables does it. We've done it with sea level rise. A few years ago, with the help of the previous mayor, we decided to start putting away around $4 million a year for sea level rise. Whether you believe in it or not, I'm a believer in sea level rise. My house runs on solar, I drive an electric car, and the city has taken the most drastic steps in the state of Florida to really be as sustainable as possible. Because I'm also a believer that there's a lot of money in being green. I save money on electricity, on water every month, and that money is something that I can use for other disposable issues that I may need. But if we're gonna really move forward as a city, we need to do what we did, for example, with sea level rise. We're putting $4 million away for the next 25 years. We've been doing it for the last 7 or 8. And we're going to have $100 million. Somebody at that point who will be sitting in my seat by that time will have a decision whether sea level rise has been addressed or it never was an issue. They'll have $100 million in a bank account where they can use that money for infrastructure, they can use that money for roads, they can use that money for art, they can use that money to buy land, whatever it may be, historic preservation. But we need to be accountable. We need to start making a plan to address this issue. We can't kick the can down the curb any further.
Back to police and police safety. Generally speaking, do the residents of Coral Gables feel safe?
Well, listen, crime is at historically low rates. We've done several things under my watch before this commission, which was adding neighborhood safety aides. I don't think of any other city has a neighborhood safety aide, which are subordinate individuals to the police that are under the guidance of the police chief and the city manager, and they ride around in little golf carts, and they're another set of eyes and ears, and they interact with the residents and individuals in the neighborhoods to make sure that we're really on the ground. We're on the ground. Police are doing a lot of work, and they're doing a great job. And we have some of the most highly trained, we have the most highly trained police and firefighters in Miami-Dade County. Our standards are the highest when it comes to education and also the background checks. Crime is at an all-time low. We've added 15 new police officers. We're working on it. Right now we have a little bit of a deficiency with police officers, but we just gave them the most rich union contract in the city's history. And we're gonna attract the best talent in the city to address our issues.
City of Coral Gables Fire Department has had this high level of integrity and the most positive, all right? Mm-hmm. And I started paying attention to that. That's terrific. My belief is the county firemen doing the same thing as Coral Gables don't get nearly the recognition and the teamwork that we see over in Coral Gables. And the same with the police. When we know when we go out to Coral Gables and we see the police cars, it's comforting.
Of course.
And our office here in South Miami, it's great. I know if I call the police, they're going to be here.
In 2 seconds.
Yeah. And it's
maybe not 2 seconds, but maybe a minute and a half, but they'll be here.
Yes.
We have some of the best response times in Miami-Dade County. And also our firefighters. Look, if you look at our firefighters right now, we don't have one vacancy. We've remodeled all our fire stations. We spent $100 million in infrastructure. We're building another one on Sunset.
We're on Sunset?
Right adjacent to Whippendip, which I'm a huge fan, and I go there once a week at minimum with my girls.
Could have fooled us all.
Listen, I also work out at 5 a.m, and I'm waiting for Grant to meet my challenge for a charity event that we're doing.
Let's talk about the passion of the city to preserve historic buildings. So tell us about that.
You know, the city. We have to be honest with who we are. George Merrick was a visionary, and next year, we're celebrating our centennial. You know, what sets a city apart? Is our Mediterranean look? It's the open space. It's our beautiful canopy, which there's a direct correlation between tree canopy and our property values. But when you look at places like the Biltmore, you look at the Fink Studio, you look at, for example, City Hall, I can go on and on. You know, our entrance features, that's something that I did this year. I started a new board, which Mayor Don Sleznick is running. He's my appointment to that board, along with being my appointment to the charter review. We are really addressing and making sure the maintenance issues of these historic gems are preserved. And I think historic preservation is important because you want to always remember the past. You want to understand where we came from. And that's why when you look at buildings, you'll see, an 18-story building, 17-story building, and you see a beautifully preserved historic building. There's a cachet to that, which sets us apart from other cities.
Of course, and sometimes it's just a very subtlety. You go along and go, oh, and it gets right to you.
Like, I'll give you an example. If you're on Ponce and you go to Booyah to have lunch, a building next door is the Fink Studio. That studio, with Kathy Swanson Rivenbach, who was then the city manager, I had a friend of mine in the real estate market tell me, Vince, this building's for sale. I considered buying it for myself. But then I thought to myself, this building has not been sold in 60 years. Let's put it in the public trust. I introduced this realtor to staff. I said, let's move forward, talk to the manager. And that, to me, outside of the Biltmore and City Hall, is probably the most important historic gem, the George Fink Studio. A lot of the city was designed in that building. But if you look at the interior and the exterior of that building, I mean, it's a masterpiece. We bought the building for a steal 5-6 years ago, and then we renovated it to its original glory. So if you walk by, like you said, you'll stumble upon this building, and you'll be like, wow, this is a masterpiece.
Yes.
And those are the things that, if not preserved, are lost forever.
Yes. Let's talk about affordable housing. That term has sort of lost its way. We use that, so it's not necessary. It is a term that's based upon a certain amount of income. Some people say, well, that's not affordable, but those are the rules that were set up, right, for it. And it's sort of, for people that are not educated in that, it's sort of a misnomer. I mean, like affordable means like $500 a month, right? So what is the city doing to meet the housing crisis that is all throughout the county, and specifically as far as the people that need affordable housing?
So our situation is a little different, and it goes to the simple fact that we're surrounded. We're surrounded by the city of Miami, West Miami, Miami-Dade County, Coconut Grove, all those areas, South Miami, excuse me. So we're kind of boxed in. There's really nowhere else for us to grow. When you look at Homestead and you look at other areas, they have the opportunity. They have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to land. One of the areas that we've been really focused in on, and we had to proceed in a zoning change for the North Gables area. I think, to me, that area is an untapped resource. And when I tell you we did a zoning change there, to address that concern. Developers came to us and said, listen, due to the cost of the land, the cost of construction, insurance, and the current cost of carrying that property, it doesn't make sense to redevelop these properties. And we need new stock. A lot of the properties that are existing there are smaller, low-scale properties. If you want to be able to address today's needs, to build smaller units where people can afford to live in the city, you've got to go vertical. That's the truth at the end of the day. Bottom line, we can talk about development versus anti-development, and we can have that conversation, and I'm more than willing to have it. I can tell you the projects that I voted against. Again, for example, I've been a staunch opponent, and I stopped the zoning change for Miracle Mile. I voted against the Agave project. I voted against the Gables Station project, which is where the Trader Joe's is on US 1. I voted against the massive proposed parking garages on Andalusia. But getting back to North Gables, that is the only area where we can truly see, in my opinion, a real change. So what did we do? The prior zoning allowed for 50 units an acre to be built there. We changed it to 100 units an acre. We doubled the amount. And the purpose there is simple: is build more units, but build them smaller so that people can afford to live in the city. I also believe in capitalism, which I think is important. That's what this country's founded on the belief of property rights. I think people have the right to follow the zoning code and build as per the zoning code. But our area, our strengths right now to be able to provide not affordable housing, but a little bit more affordable, is the North Gables area. But it has to happen through redevelopment of the existing previous buildings.
Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Okay, I'm just letting him know.
Hit me with something hard. Come on, you got to hit me with something hard.
Okay. About 8 years ago, Michael Phelps started in some commercials for talking about his mental health. It is such a significant issue around the world, and I see it and feel it almost every day. We work with a lot of local not-for-profits, including yesterday some folks from NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, was here. And one of the things I know is my obligation is to ask people that have the ability, like yourself and your colleagues, to spend some time, energy, and money trying to help the people that are having emotional and or mental health issues. If you could push a button and you say, this is what we could do for people like that, what would it be, Mayor?
Well, you know what I've seen an uptick in the city is of homelessness, and it's concerning. It's concerning. I think there's a direct correlation with what we're facing right now at a national level. You know, people want to say that everything is perfectly fine, and it's not. You've seen the jobs report lately that's come out, inflation. You have people who are really, really struggling. You know, we're attacking the issue with Camilla's house, and they're helping us as much as they can. But there's outstanding laws in the books that, you know, you can't force somebody to get help. A lot of the people, and there's a misnomer that people on the street are people who don't want to work, they're lazy. That's not the truth. I interact with these people constantly. These are people who have serious mental health issues. Yes, there's drug addiction, but these are serious mental health. A lot of them are veterans who have been through some serious issues. And we turn a blind eye to that because, you know, we live in South Miami, we live in Coral Gables, West Miami, Coconut Grove. We live in this paradise. But if we look a little bit closer, we have some serious issues with homelessness. And I'm going to tell you, you know, I've battled with mental health. We all battle with mental health. Anybody that tells you they don't it will be lying to you. Serving in public office is very, very difficult. Very difficult. The statements that are made about you, about your family, the false statements, the clearly false, derogatory statements, the public interest, the statement on the constant attacks to tear you down or to shift your view on a certain item before you vote, results in a lot of depression, results in issues that people battle with on a day-to-day basis. I go to the gym every single day, 5 a.m. That's part of my mental health treatment. You know, to me, getting out there and sweating is important. I'm not afraid to admit it that I've sat down with you know, medical professionals and had conversations with them about how I can be the best leader, the best father, the best husband, the best friend. How can I be a better version of myself? And mental health is, and I'm happy you brought this up. And like, I want to put this on the record. You didn't tell me any of the questions we were talking about today, but mental health is something that people are ashamed to talk about.
And I'm glad you brought that up. All we need to do is get it to the right even, all right? So people can have that conversation. And years ago, when all of a sudden there was a mental health day, I go, how perfect is that? I used to be a registered nurse. I spent some time working in Jackson Hospital Institute. And I said to my psychiatrist at the time, I said, Doc, the only difference between them and me is I got the keys. He says, Michael, sometimes it's that close that you're just there and you just don't know, all right? And we know across the country there's a special 3-digit phone number if you feel suicidal. I don't remember what it is, all right? Where you can speak to somebody that can help. And certainly we know with COVID, it accentuated people's personalities, made them better, made them worse.
People were isolated.
Yes.
A lot of isolation. And that to me, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but to me as a business owner, I have almost 60 employees in my businesses. As the mayor of a city, we face our ups and downs. You know, we're out there trying to do the best we can to represent our constituents, to make sure that our business moves forward for our families. And you know, some of the times we fall short, and it takes away. If you're not mentally strong and prepared to deal with those, you know, ups and downs. You know, I see myself and I see people, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Like I said, I see myself. I always try to point a finger at myself and say, I see myself in positions where, you know, I don't look at the big picture. I don't look at all the accomplishments. I look at the failure. And that to me is something that I see across the board. What I try to do, and this is something that I've been doing over the last 2 years, I have friends that, you know, when I find out a friend is going through an issue, and I did it this week with a friend, I make sure that I call him once a week. No agenda. How are things going? How can I help you? Let's get a cup of coffee. Let's sit down. I get more out of it than they actually do.
And sometimes that's what people want, that they're not alone.
Just to listen.
And just a pat on the back and just be there, because we never know what people are going through. And it doesn't matter where it is, when it is. But we do know that at the gym, there's less depressed people. We know that.
A lot.
Because of all the endorphins and testosterone or whatever that keeps people a little bit happier. So I'm going to ask you in the last minute, if you would think about people that have helped you, maybe they're mentors, maybe they're with us, or maybe they're not. If you could look over into this camera and talk to them, all right, and tell them what they meant to you. You're looking right at that camera there.
You know, for me, it's my father, and it's my father-in-law who passed away 2 years ago. We celebrated, when we say we celebrate his life, a week ago that he had passed away. These are two men that are exceptional, are men who live for their families, for their professions. My father's a doctor. My father was a lawyer. Individuals who never compromise on their values, individuals who put their families, their friends, and this community first. So to me, I try to emulate them every single day. I try to understand that Rome wasn't built in one day, that we have to set goals and try to meet those goals. But the most important thing that I learned from these individuals is to always respect your friends, your colleagues, and your neighbors. Always try to do what you can. And at the end of the day, if you fall short, you left it all on the field. And I played baseball in high school, and to me, that is something that, an adage that I live by every single day. You know, do your hardest, always follow your conscience, and just be respectful and kind to every single body around you. That's what I learned from my dad. That's what I learned from my father-in-law.
Mayor Vince Lago,
Pleasure.
thank you for taking care of Coral Gables, and thanks for being the man in the arena. We're looking right over there. Folks, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time. Remember, take care of yourselves and your family. Bye.